don't ride for nobody, no badge, no crew. Truth don't play favors, it just come through. I don't take sides, I take time and review. So to put it, let the context break through. If you clean, that stamp stay true.
200 feet above the streets of downtown Chicago, two men are dangling from a skyscraper. It's 3 a.m., December, and freezing cold. They aren't window washers, and they aren't stuntmen. They are convicted bank robbers, and they're hanging by a thread. Literally. Their lifeline is a 200-foot rope made entirely of bed sheets, reinforced with thousands of strands of dental floss.
Today is just my day to be tested. I tell you what, I've had a whole day of testing today. I just want y'all to be fully aware before we go any further into this video. First, y'all try and put Caligula up on the screen to make it look like he's trying to do the Pietà or something. That's the first thing that's wrong with the video. And then dental floss and bedsheet. These have been watching too many 1930s bad guys movies. Yeah, see, we're going to get them. So we're going to escape. We're going to get some bed sheets off of the bed, see, and they're going to throw it over the edge, see? Sure, it's going to hold. You got any dental floss? That's the best. Okay, sir, tell me exactly what they were doing. I cannot wait to hear why this Timu Ocean's 11 is taking place. Please tell me.
One slip, one weak knot, one gust of wind whipping between the high rises, and they plummet 17 stories onto solid concrete. The building they are escaping from is the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a federal prison designed to be inescapable. But Joe Spanks and Kenneth Conley didn't spend 6 months smashing a concrete wall just to fall. They have just executed the most audacious jailbreak in modern American history.
You remember a movie called Shawshank Redemption? I remember Shawshank Redemption, but Shawshank Redemption was like, not like this. He escaped through sewer system and he had to swim through a lot of crap to get out. But along those lines, you shouldn't be able to get out. Now, mind you, this is not a new story that he's relaying. You know, this happened like in 2012, something like that, December. So it's cold, cold. 2012. I remember 2012. 2012 was indeed a cold out here in Washington. I couldn't even imagine what it's like out there. Woo.
And the craziest part? Right now, the guards inside think Banks and Conley are sleeping soundly. They left decoys in their beds and replaced the steel bars they ripped out of the window frame with fakes so convincing nobody noticed. This isn't just an escape. It's a magic trick performed 17 stories in the air. They're about to vanish, triggering a massive FBI manhunt, and the authorities don't realize they aren't just chasing two desperate men. They are chasing the ghosts who managed to walk through a solid wall.
Yeah. Hire these men for something spectacular, like David Copperfield, David Blaine. Something spectacular. Movies, stuntmen, perhaps. I don't know. Look, this takes a lot of... I guess jail time could be bad. You're in a place that you can't escape from. So mentally, you're prepared for anything. Even if it means falling 17 stories, you're okay with that. You're going to take the chance. But bed sheets, that long? I don't know much about... I only watch for movies. I'm going to know from movies. Maybe they took sheets once in a while. More sheets than just one loadout if they ever did laundry, and they kind of forged it away and stripped it down so you couldn't find it and then tied it up. I don't know. The dental floss bar is what's tripping me out. Good rebar.
Perhaps motivated by the $500,000 in stolen cash that the FBI still hasn't found. The story starts 5 days earlier inside a federal courtroom. Joseph Joe Spanks, 37 years old, is standing trial. Spanks is notorious. The FBI called him the second-hand bandit because he committed his robberies wearing used thrift store clothing, making him incredibly hard to identify. He wasn't a petty thief. Banks was prolific. In just a few heists, he has stolen over $589,000.
Dang!
And the crucial detail, over $540,000 of that was still missing.
Dang!
Banks didn't trust the system. He fired his lawyers and represented himself, claiming he was a Moorish national, a sovereign citizen exempt from U.S. law. His trial was chaos. He was so disruptive that marshals had to physically strap him into a restraint chair just to keep him present.
Again, these are some brainiac people. Now, listen to me. I'm not suggesting anybody turn to a life of crime. Don't do it. Bad idea. But this sounds like some 1980s movie kind of criminal activity. They keep, the outfit change that they always used to do. Like you'd see them, right? They'd go into a place, rob a bank or rob something. And as they walk out, clothes just get taken off. They're switching to new clothes. Those kind of the 80s, or they rob somebody of their clothes and switching. That sounds like some crazy 1980s kind of stuff. Wow. I'm intrigued now. I got to find out.
The jury didn't buy it. On December 13th, 2012, they found him guilty. He was facing up to 80 years in prison, a life sentence. As the judge, Rebecca Palmyre, prepared for the next steps, Banks looked her dead in the eye and delivered a chilling promise. He told her he would be seeking retribution. Then he added, "No motion will be filed, but you'll hear from me." When Banks was returned to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, or MCC, he knew he was never getting out legally. The MCC Chicago is unique. It's not spread out over acres of land surrounded by fences. It's a triangle-shaped skyscraper, 27 stories high, right in the heart of the city. It was designed to be escape-proof. There are no traditional bars on the windows. Instead, the windows are just 5-inch wide slits. That's smaller than the width of an average human head. The theory was simple. If you can't fit through the window, you can't escape. And for decades, that theory held true.
Can I ask you, I don't know much about the prison, but if it's just rebar and not glass, just hear me out. I don't know. They're using AI video, so I don't know. I don't know. If it's just bars and no protection from the outside elements, they were freezing in there either way. But I highly doubt the humane thing would have kicked in, and that would have probably been sealed. It's probably glass. I'm going to probably guess that it was rebar across, or some sort of a bar across it with glass. It could never be that they were staying. No way, right? No way. Impossible.
Banks was housed on the 17th floor. His cellmate was 38-year-old Kenneth Conley. Conley was a former strip club manager who had recently pleaded guilty to robbing about $4,000 from a bank. He was also facing serious time, up to 20 years. So, 2 desperate men, 1 tiny cell. The motivation was clear. Banks had a potential fortune waiting for him on the outside, and Conley had nothing to look forward to but concrete and steel. If they were going to escape, there was only one way out.
Busted.
The window. But how do 2 men fit through a 5-inch gap? Well, they don't. They needed to make the gap bigger. The plan they devised was audacious, requiring patience, ingenuity, and incredible luck. It didn't happen overnight. This took weeks, maybe months. First, they needed tools. Where do you get a sledgehammer in federal lockup? Well, you don't. You improvise. Investigators believe they smuggled heavy metal parts, possibly from a floor buffer machine or maybe even a bell bar from the weight room, back to their cell. This became their chisel and hammer. Slowly, agonizingly, they began to smash the cinder block wall surrounding the window frame.
Again, y'all are going to have to help a brother out. Do cell checks not happen? I get that you think it can't be escaped from, and I get all that. But this seems a little too... I don't know. Seems a little too, you know what I mean? Like, how do you not know that this is happening in there? You don't hear it. You don't see dust clean up. Something ain't right.
This was the most dangerous part. The noise of the metal on concrete echoes. They had to work in short bursts, timing their strikes with the rattling of food carts or the slamming of doors. Every swing risked discovery. Every speck of dust and debris had to disappear. So they flushed it down the toilet, bit by bit, day after day. They couldn't just leave a gaping hole in the wall while they worked.
No duh.
They needed camouflage. They pulverized the dust and mixed it with soap or toothpaste, creating a paste that matched the color of the wall. They used that paste to cover their progress. Eventually, they managed to remove an entire cinder block and dislodge the steel security bars, but they couldn't escape yet. They needed a way down. You can't just jump 17 stories. So they needed a rope, a 200-foot rope.
Dang.
Banks and Conley started hoarding bed sheets. They had to manipulate the laundry system, bribe other inmates, or slowly steal them over time.
I was right about something. I feel proud of myself. My logic motion kicked in. I thought that's what they had to do. I figured as much. Laundry. They get the steel sheets once in a while, strip them down, tie them up. I still wouldn't go to prison to try it. I'm just letting you know. That's not... Not gonna be me. End up meeting some Fleece Johnson mofo. I'm not doing that. No. I like being outside, first of all, but I also like every inch of my body away from other people's body. That's the most vital thing, right off the rip. You ever want to convince just that? Tell me that's gonna happen, and I will leave. Never touch nothing to do with prison. Nope. But I was right. I was right about it, that they had to manipulate the laundry system somehow to get that much bed sheeting.
But prison bed sheets are thin. They knew the sheets alone wouldn't hold the weight of 2 grown men. And this is where the genius detail comes in. Dental floss.
Yep.
They collected thousands of yards of dental floss. They braided the floss into the bed sheets, reinforcing the entire length of the rope. Dental floss, when braided, is incredibly strong.
Yes, it is.
It turned a flimsy collection of sheets into a viable escape tool. They even fashioned harnesses so they could descend safely.
Dang.
The scale of this operation inside a tiny cell is mind-boggling. They were hiding tools, a cinder block, steel bars, and a 200-foot rope. But they had one more problem.
Like, damn. I don't even know how you do. Well, this is the only way I could think. Again, I'm just thinking outside the box. You have the bed sheets, but you put it underneath, the bed, the mattress, and you inlay it like that. So it goes back and forth, and you put it as close to each other as possible, so it just becomes like a second mattress. That's the only place I can see you hiding it. But they got some... Look, I tell you, some of these people should be studied. There was a movie, Stallone made it. It's called Escape Plan. And what he was a hired hand to learn how to break out of prison. So he would be hired by these prisons, and he'd be put into prison, and his job would be to escape, so that they would know what routes of escape there was in this prison for all of these people. So he would go in under the auspices of having done something really egregious, so you'd have to be in max security or something like that. And once he got in, it would be up to him. He would be given like a month and a half to 2 months to try and find a way out. And that was his whole job. Infiltrate prisons, break out of prisons, and then report back to the prison owners of how he did it, so they can mitigate that as an option and fix it. Hire these guys for that. That's what I would do. Hire them, give them something to do that's legal. We'll put you in jail and we'll pay you handsomely, but you just try and find your way out. You will not suffer any consequences while in there. They'll be protected, but I need you to figure out how to break out. If they can come up with this, man.
If a guard looked closely at the window, they would see the missing steel bars. So Banks and Conley created fakes. They reportedly used cardboard from toilet paper rolls, colored to look like metal, and placed them in the window slots. From a distance, the cell looked secure. The real steel bars? They shoved those deep inside their mattresses. They even prepared their bodies. Knowing the hole would be incredibly tight, both men reportedly started dieting, trying to lose weight to ensure that they could fit through the gap. Everything was meticulously planned.
Dang.
For Banks, the clock was ticking faster after his conviction, and the time was now. Monday, December 17th, 2012. At 10 p.m., the guards conducted a routine headcount. Banks and Conley were both present. The guards marked them down and move on. They didn't notice the fake bars. As soon as their tier was quiet and the lights dimmed, Banks and Conley got to work. They needed to buy themselves hours. They prepared their decoys. They took their clothes and extra sheets and molded them under their blankets into the shapes of bodies.
Now, even this is me. I don't mind heights. I really don't. But I mind heights without safety. I might mind heights without safety. Now, listen, again, I wouldn't be in prison. But just makeshifting some rope out of sheets and dental floss. I don't care how tensile strength is with the... I would not be climbing out, especially with that much of a gap to slip out. So you're going out either foot first and having to... No. Nope. Nah, y'all good, but that's better you than me.
If a guard shone a flashlight into the cell during the night, it would look like they were sound asleep. The moment of truth arrived. They removed the fake bars and loosened cinder block. They now had a hole just big enough to squeeze through. It was incredibly tight. They secured the bedsheet rope to the remaining structure of the window frame. They double-checked the knots. This was it. It was the early hours of Tuesday, December 18th. The temperature in Chicago was freezing, and the wind at that altitude was brutal. The men changed out of their orange jumpsuits and into street clothes they had hidden underneath. Then one of them squeezed through the narrow opening. Just imagine the vertigo. They were 17 stories above the street and in the dark, about to put their full trust in a homemade rope.
Yeah, no, I'm good. You'd be here. Let me tell you something. Oh, that'd be me. I'm not doing that. I'll serve my time, bro. I'm good. I'll just serve it because you know what? Now you're calculating breeze and okay. Of all the things, I'll put them in a hierarchy of things I will never tolerate to do this. Starting with the one thing I can tolerate most to the last. I can tolerate climbing through a small hole. No problem there. I can even tolerate the height. No problem there. I might be able to tolerate the wind. But the one thing I will never tolerate is no cold with no jacket. That's the sign, seal, and deliver deal to never go out that hole. The first, you know what, bro? Do we need this escape? Like, is it necessary? Can we wait? Okay, can we wait till summer to do it? Summer would be a good time. Summer would be warm. You ain't gonna get me doing this in the winter.
They threw the rope over the side. It cascaded down the concrete wall, and they slipped into the harnesses, and then they began their descent. This wasn't a smooth, tactical rappel. This was a desperate slide down a rough surface. The friction was intense. When the FBI later recovered the rope, they found it stained with blood.
Yeah.
Their hands were raw. They had to move quickly, but carefully. If the rope swung too much, they could smash against the building. If their grip slipped, they were dead. It must have taken several minutes to reach the bottom. Minutes where they were completely exposed. If anyone walking by had happened to look up, they would have seen the unbelievable sight of two men scaling down the side of the federal prison.
Now remember, it's cold. So not only is it cold, your grip is wrong because you can't hold very good in cold. And now you get cut and it's cold. Forget. Let's add one more. No gloves in the cold. That'd be the number one reason I'd never do it. What?
But nobody looked up. At approximately 2:40 a.m., Joe Spanks and Kenneth Conley touched down on the street. They were free. They had defeated the skyscraper jail. They didn't waste a second. They ran a few blocks, and in a stroke of cinematic luck, they didn't have a getaway car waiting. Instead, they did what anyone in downtown Chicago does when they need a ride. They hailed a taxi. A cab driver picked up the two men in the middle of the night, completely unaware that he was now the getaway driver for the most high-profile escapees in the country. They told the driver to head south toward the suburbs. They paid with cash and vanished into the night.
Again, y'all can tell me. I'm guessing that, commissary books and all that stuff, you might have cash on you. And they probably were foraging away cash so they can have it. So I guess that might be the reason why they had enough. And it is 2012, 2013. So the price of taxi cabs are not as skyrocketing as they are now. We are talking about 13 years ago now.
Back at the MCC, everything was quiet. The guards continued their rounds. At 3:30 a.m., a guard conducted a head count. He walked past the cell, flashed his lights inside, saw the 2 bodies in the bunks, and moved on. The security failures that night were catastrophic.
You think?
The area where Banks and Conley descended was supposed to be monitored by video cameras, but the camera covering that wall was reportedly malfunctioning. Furthermore, the staffing levels that night were low. The guards were complacent. Hours passed. 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Around 7 a.m., the morning shift started arriving for work. As employees walked toward the entrance, one of them noticed something strange. Dangling down the side of the building, blowing in the morning wind, was the long, knotted rope.
Yeah, hours are enough to get away. They are. Well, let's see how soon they got caught.
The sight paralyzed the staff. It was so blatant, so absurd, that it took a moment to process.
You think?
Panic immediately set in. The prison went into lockdown. Guards rushed to the 17th floor. When they opened the door, they found the decoys. They ripped the blankets off, and no inmates. They looked at the window, a gaping hole in the concrete. Joe Spanks and Kenneth Conley were gone. They had at least a 4-hour head start. The news broke instantly, and it was a sensation. This wasn't just a prison break, it was a humiliation for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The FBI immediately took over the investigation. A $50,000 reward was offered. The perceived threat Banks made to the judge suddenly seemed very real. Federal agents were assigned to protect Judge Palmire and the prosecutors from the trial. The fear was that Banks hadn't escaped just to run, but to seek retribution as he promised.
Bro, just go get your money, man, and be done. Just go get your money. You have all that intelligence that you can build that kind of an escape plan, and you...
The manhunt was massive and chaotic. Heavily armed federal agents and local police swarmed the city. There was a report of a sighting at the Greyhound bus station. A SWAT team swarmed the station, but they found nothing. The investigators caught a break by tracing the taxi ride. The trail led them south, to the area near Tinley Park. Sources revealed that Kenneth Conley went straight toward his mother's house. He showed up on the doorstep hours after escaping a federal prison, apparently expecting breakfast and a place to hide.
I'm gonna say it. Y'all can judge me all you want. How much you want to bet White Mama snitched? How much you all want to bet White Mama snitched? How much you want to bet? Let's find out.
His mother was stunned. She made the agonizing decision to turn her own son away, refusing to help him hide.
Did you snitch?
The FBI and SWAT teams quickly surrounded the neighborhood, and they brought in police dogs. The dogs picked up the suspect's scent and followed it to a nearby metro station in New Lenox. The dogs lost the scent right there on the platform. Authorities believed Banks and Conley had boarded a commuter train. The trail went cold. The city was on edge. The speculation was that they were headed for a far-flung island, ready to live off the $500,000 Banks had stashed away. But the reality of being a fugitive is rarely glamorous.
No.
It's stressful, paranoid, and often very short-lived. Banks and Conley knew they couldn't stay together. The heat was too intense. They split up. Joe Spanks wasn't as careful as he thought he was. He didn't flee the state. He stayed right in Chicago, heading back to familiar territory on the north side. On the night of Thursday, December 20th, just over 2 days after the escape, the FBI received a tip. They tracked Banks to the Lincoln Park neighborhood, an upscale area not far from where he lived before his arrest. Around 11:30 p.m., officers and federal agents surrounded an apartment building. They moved in quickly. Banks was caught completely by surprise.
All that hard work to escape. You didn't watch Shawshank Redemption, man? Brother, didn't you watch Shawshank Redemption? I'm glad you didn't, because you committed a crime. But however, you became complacent. And then if you were going to harm the judge, it's a good thing that you got picked up because ain't nobody trying to. You'd have definitely had life without parole, and they probably would have put you in the deepest, darkest hole. I wonder if they can still do that. Let's find out.
He was arrested without incident. When they searched him, there was no sign of the missing $540,000.
Well, it's still out there. Huh?
The second-hand bandit's run was over, though. His impossible escape had bought him less than 3 days of freedom.
Man, what?
But Kenneth Conley was still out there, and he was proving much harder to find. Days turned into weeks. Christmas came and went. New Year's passed. And there was speculation that Conley had fled the state. The nationwide manhunt continued, but the leads were drying up. Conley had also decided to stay close to home. He was hiding out in Palos Hills, another suburb southwest of Chicago. He knew the police were looking for him, so he decided to hide in plain sight.
Come on, man. You know what you're doing here. Y'all don't see it. Y'all don't see it. I find it funny, but y'all don't see it, man. Come on, bro. Come on. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing with this image. He decided to hide in plain sight. And then you go put the whole scene of white snow on the floor, knowing that they're looking for the only. Come on, man. Come on. I see what you did. I get it. Look. Good joke. Really good joke. White dude decided he gonna hide in some white snow. He ain't gonna catch that plain sight. Maybe that wasn't their intention, but that's what I'm seeing here. That's wild.
But his disguise wasn't exactly subtle. It was now January 4th, 2013, 17 days since the escape. Police responded to a report of suspicious activities in an apartment building in Palos Hills. The caller reported hearing noises like someone trying to find an unlocked door. When they arrived, they saw a man who looked completely out of place. It was an old man, bundled up in a heavy overcoat, wearing a beret and leaning heavily on a cane. He looked frail and harmless, but something about the old man seemed off. The police approached him. As they got closer, they realized that it was a disguise. It was Kenneth Conley.
So we know who the mastermind behind the operation was. It wasn't this guy. It was the other guy. Maybe it was mutual. One had the dental floss idea and one had the bedsheet idea, and they both joined forces to figure out the concrete. But what? Okay, again, if people are this intelligent to do what they're doing to escape the penalties of wrongdoing, don't you have enough wherewithal, ability to do something right the first time so you never go to prison and put emphasis and work behind something to I've never understood that. The majority of people I've heard going to prison always have some savant level intelligence in some field, whether that be in mechanics, money, sports. They are some of the most gifted people, but they always apply themselves to the crazy stuff of breaking the law when they could have been absolutely unstoppable. They would just apply that same energy to their skill. That's crazy.
When Conley realized he was made, the disguise didn't stop him from resisting. He fought back and he ran. The officers chased him down. He allegedly assaulted a federal agent during the arrest, trying desperately to get away one last time. The officers were forced to use a taser to subdue him. Finally, they got him into handcuffs. When the FBI agents confirmed his identity, Conley was defiant. He reportedly looked at the agents and said, "It happened once. What makes you think it won't happen again?" The spectacular skyscraper jailbreak was officially over.
I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't. That's not going to bode well for your new sentencing. Just a heads up. You saying stuff like that will tell them we need to put him in somewhere way more secure.
The aftermath of the escape sent shockwaves through the federal prison system. The MCC Chicago was scrutinized intensely. The investigation pointed to complacency by the staff and they never believed an escape from the 17th floor was possible, so they just stopped looking for the signs. In response, the Bureau of Prisons implemented changes. The windows at the MCC were reinforced with heavy steel plating. Furthermore, a new national policy was implemented. It became known as the bar tap. Now guards in federal high-rise prisons must regularly go into cells and physically strike the window bars and metal housing with a mallet to ensure they are real and intact. They are literally checking to make sure nobody is replacing the bars with fakes. As for the escapees, the courts showed no mercy. In 2014, Joe Spanks stood before Judge Paul Meyer again. He apologized, calling the escape an act of desperation.
Yeah, you think?
He admitted his sovereign citizen defense had all been an act. The judge wasn't convinced.
I wonder.
She called Banks narcissistic and a threat and a menace to society. Joe Spanks was sentenced to 36 years in federal prison. He was also ordered to pay $589,000 in restitution. The vast majority of that money has never been recovered.
All of that, just to get more time. That's the wild part of this whole thing. Like, you knew the risk of coming back to prison and getting a whole lot more time than you got before. Instead of, you could have been like, you know what? I understand the scary parts of jail. I get it. But wouldn't it be, is it really so much scarier than jumping out of a window 17 stories up in the middle of the winter where your hands get tore up and still got caught? I'm not going to try and find out. I'm not going to be the experimenter in that one.
He's currently housed at USP Hazleton, a high-security penitentiary in West Virginia. Kenneth Conley's fate was similar. He was first sentenced for the bank robbery he was awaiting sentence for when he escaped. The judge in that case gave him the maximum penalty of 20 years, citing the escape as a key reason for the harshness. Then Conley faced sentencing specifically for the escape in front of Judge Gary Feinerman. Conley smirked his way through the hearing. He even winked at the federal agents who had arrested him, and Judge Feinerman noted Conley's long record and called him incorrigibly violent. He sentenced Conley to an additional 3.5 years.
I was expecting something more like 30. Just maybe.
Conley was furious. He exploded in the courtroom, yelling profanities at the judge, telling him exactly where he could stick his sentence, and suggested the judge increase it to 5 years.
Oh.
Judge Feinerman simply replied, "Thank you."
I thought he just said, bet. Today he would have been like, oh, all right, bet. But I'll do you one better. Since you like time so much and you seem like a mathematician, how about I do you a solid? And we'll not do 5, we won't do 3. But since you like more, we'll do 30. You like that?
Kenneth Conley is currently incarcerated at USP Thompson in Illinois.
This is crazy work when you think about it. That there are indeed people out there that have the skill set to do so much for humanity and for the world and for themselves, and they choose to do the most notoriously crazy things that could end them life-wise and in their freedom. Think about it, right? You have the ability to create and craft in your mind a way to steal stuff. If you were to just but figure a sensible use of your skill set, clothing, talk to the cops instead and figure out how you can work. I mean, there's so many options out there that you could have used and didn't. I understand the allure of crime is quick money. Easy, quick, sometimes easy, but mostly quick. But in the long run, you're not benefiting from it like at all. You're not the beneficiary of anything good from doing this crap. If you're somebody out there and you're struggling to decide whether to do the right thing or the wrong thing, do not pick the wrong thing. It can only be more wrong. Pick the right thing. Try and find a way to express this skill in something legal, something that you can craft for yourself. Make a niche. You might be surprised. You might find something that no one else is doing, and you'll be the #1 person they come to for it. Just a thought, just a food for thought. In any case, let us know what you think about Dick Grissom. Wonderful story. The way he put it out, really well done. And I think there might be more of these happening than we know, but for this particular two, it's a waste of a good effort. But thankfully, no one else was hurt in the situation, including themselves. We look forward to hearing your comments on this one.
One wrong move, turn the present into the past. I don't ride for nobody, no badge, no crew. Truth don't play favors, it just come through. I don't take sides, I take time and review. So to put it, let the context break through. If you clean, that stamp stay true. If you foul, that show up too. No miss, no spin, no cover up hype. Everything judge and